Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Dynamics Corner, the podcast where we dive deep into all things Microsoft Dynamics. Whether you're a seasoned expert or just starting your journey into the world of Dynamics 365, this is your place to gain insights, learn new tricks, and hear from industry experts. And I will say, as the great Yogi Berra once said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. I'm your co-host, Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on January 26th, 2024. Kris. Here we are, 2024. Our first recording of the year 2024. If you think back,
New
we actually
season.
started this back in 2022. We're still going strong. We took a little time, took a little purposeful break over the holidays from the recording so we can get our thoughts together and plan a lot of great things for this upcoming year. But when you say fork, sometimes I think of like GitHub and those other things. But today, we had this great conversation. I often get asked, and I hear the question, is it better to be a developer or better to be a consultant? And we had the opportunity to speak with several guests that have some experience in dealing with all of those roles. Today, we had the opportunity to speak with AJ Ansari, Henrik Helgesen, and the BC Catwoman.
I love your headset, Tonya.
I love
Thank you.
Yeah,
the headset.
that's awesome.
I felt like it was very on brand, so.
It is.
Are those things glowing? Those ears? Oh, that's so
Yes.
cool.
They actually, you can like change their color and everything too. So
That's awesome.
Are those wireless or wired? I can't tell.
they're wired.
They're wired.
Oh, that's where they have the power. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like those.
I can just picture you, Brad, wearing these things like on podcasts. Just wear these things.
I could get something like that. Absolutely. I think
Yeah.
that would be great. Does that have a microphone on it?
It sure does.
Is that like a tail?
I guess maybe. I don't know.
I thought I didn't. What is that? A cat or a mouse?
I'm a cat. I
Okay.
can change my ears if I want to be a rabbit or a bear. So,
Oh,
but
that's too
they're
funny.
officially like the Razer Kraken Kitty headphones. Or like,
Oh, I see. There's
Yeah.
Razer gaming
yes.
headsets. Okay, I
Yes.
see.
Do you wear those for work? Or
I just got them. So,
Oh,
yes, it's
okay.
now part of like my workwear. So,
And then your sweater is of a cheetah.
it is. Yes.
So you were like all out cat.
Yes. I mean, my cats are a part of my blog, and I'm getting stickers made. So when I see you guys at conferences, you'll have to get stickers for my blog.
Sweet.
So
Okay. And the stickers will be of cats.
it's my cat. Like I
Okay.
paid someone to like make a picture of my cat, and he's working at a laptop with the BC logo on it. Like it's legit.
Nice.
Nice.
Do you have any with you?
Not yet. I have to get them printed.
Oh,
So
I wanted to see the.
you have to wait until directions.
Oh,
That's
yes.
that's not far from now. It's
Directions.
actually
I was thinking October, but I'm like, wait, that's a long way. But
April.
October is
April.
not.
Did you guys submit sessions?
Yes.
Nice. Nice.
Nice
There
pocket
is.
square there.
There he is. Good afternoon. How are you
AJ.
doing?
Hey guys, I'm playing around with my camera. Give me a second. I know you get to see mine.
I couldn't see yours past mine. I can hear you.
But I
We
can
can
hear
hear
you.
I just noticed your name, Henrik.
I just noticed it as well. That's so funny.
This is just, we're breaking out all of the stops for the first podcast
Well,
of the year.
It's one of those things when, and I say, David Singleton, when he first brought up the terminology of a dinosaur, I think the first gut feeling a lot of people had was that's kind of an offending term to use just because I've been doing this for so long. I just did the opposite. I'm just embracing it. Yes, I've been in this world for a long time. I've seen a lot of shit. I've done a lot of shit. I mean, I'll bet you if I look at some of the code I wrote 10 years ago, I'm gonna want to puke. So the difference is I've learned to adapt, and others haven't, and that's kind of my. So yeah, no, I embrace the dinosaur term, and I think what it also does is sometimes, yes, there's some things that are done weird, but those of us that's done this long enough have a kind of a background as to, well, why things work the way they work, or the way that they work the way they really shouldn't. Exactly, because works as designed, right? I mean,
that's a double-edged sword, though, because and just for the record, it's you put in your name raw. So we have Tonya is all out cat.
Yes.
Short of the wearing a dinosaur costume, you're all out dinosaur. We'll have to wait for AJ to pop in, but what you just mentioned is a double-edged sword in the sense that understanding and knowing why the things work the way they work may lead you to just go, it works that way because of this way. And to Tanya's point, it may not work. And you're not going to have the same brush it off because of, okay, that's just the way it was back in 2009. So I agree with you. You have a better understanding of the application and the evolution of the application and maybe why things are the way they are. But it may not, that justifies why the way they are, but it doesn't mean that it's the way that it should be.
No, I totally agree. I mean, that's, my response sometimes have been is kind of, when I get the design as works, and then many times I've said, well, then it's a very poor design. It is what it is. But, as I think sometimes, it's good to know or understand how it works. Whether
yes.
or not, right? I mean, so...
Well, I think the understanding you have more tolerance because in some cases you understand the evolution of the upgrade path and potentially not wanting to jeopardize an existing implementation to make
I've
easier
seen it,
for them.
Working with some people who comes from the GP world, right? And I know some of the videos Steve have made. Sometimes I'm literally yelling at the screen. No, that's not how it works. But I'm also but I can see why he would think it would work this way, right? So sometimes it's to your point, Brad, where it's kind of, well, it works technically, but does it really work, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I agree.
Yes, I have a cat cup too.
Nice.
Yes.
You're on theme.
I am. Yeah. Do you want to see my really cool? I have a cat light, and it changes colors too.
Oh wow! Look at that.
Yeah. Now, we're very on brand over here now.
Do you see? I know that cats, they have cat houses. With the scratchy, crawly things and the things that you can lay on, or not lay on. The cats can lay on. Is that what you sleep in?
No.
I didn't know if you had one, like a life-size one that you use.
A life-size cat tree.
I think you should have one.
I should
the next
consider
time we have
that,
a conversation and just put a life-size cat tree behind you, and then when you're working, you can take a picture of yourself sitting in your cat tree on your laptop, writing a blog article. I think that would be neat.
I'll get AI to generate a picture for me.
I think you could do that.
There you go. There you go. There he is.
There he is. Welcome back. Now we get to see the real AJ.
And technology doesn't work. So I strategically disconnected a little bit ago because I was hoping that would split the file. And then when you do your editing, you can just drop that first embarrassing part out. because I had a bit of the computer connected to the wall moment, right?
Yes.
When I was trying to join last time.
I appreciate you considering my time after editing this. So.
Oh, but he's already
It
going
should
to
give you
have
two separate file uploads, and I think, or at least, it should give you some way to X out that portion. Then it looked like I just conveniently flew in, except I've just told everybody I didn't just conveniently
I know,
fly.
so we'll have to get creative here. And also, we do thank you for the blooper, because you never know, we may have a year-end blooper reel. So all of these double edits.
That would be fun.
I want, and now I fully expect the outtake. I'll be offended if there's no outtake reel. So
we've talked about that, and I think it's something to be interesting. But maybe Chris,
can you do a solo platter?
Maybe we should start taking notes of where the bloopers are and some of the bloopers, and then put together
that'd be good.
A nice video
we
at
could
the
certainly
end of
do
the
that.
year for some bloopers. But here we are. It's our first podcast of the year. Chris and I decided to take a little break from it, not because of the lack of passion, lack of interest. I just wanted to give it a little break. And we are thankful for all of you to be with us today, because I am looking forward to this conversation. But before we get into it, I would like to give everybody the opportunity on this meeting to tell us a little bit about themselves, tell us a little bit what you do, and some of the great things that you do for the community. I think we can start first. AJ, I don't know if you noticed, Tonya's like all cat today. She has cat headphones with a cat shirt, and she has cat lights, and
a cat cup.
She told me in a cat cup, and she told us that she will be building a cat tree to put in her house for her to sleep in. So
human size.
Per Brad's request.
Yes. So, Tonya, would you tell us a little about yourself, please?
Absolutely. My name is Tonya Bricco-Meske. I am a developer at RSM on their app dev team. So we do PTE deployments for customers. I've been a Business Central developer for about 8 years now. And I have a blog called BC Dev Notebook, which features my cats. And I like to share with the community, I guess, just tidbits that I come across the way on different development topics that I was searching for answers and I couldn't easily find, or something to help people who are starting out as new developers.
Great, thank you. Now we have Mr. Henrik Helgesen. Rawr. Now that's another thing he put on his name for this meeting that I don't know. Now every time I see you, I kind of want to just go, Rawr. I don't know if I could do that, but AJ's getting it down.
So, yes, my name is Henrik Helgesen, born and raised in Denmark, where I got my start in 97, I want to say it is, on a good old Navigator 3.53 running on a Unix server. And that, I think, qualifies me as a dinosaur. I've chosen to embrace that category or nickname. I've been with the product for a long time. I always say I've worked with everything from before you were born till the day you die, all those kind of industries. Been doing nav and development and BC for as long as I know. It's the only thing I've ever done in my career. I don't know how to do anything else, for good and bad. And I do have a blog. It's not necessarily super active. I spend too much time working, unfortunately. I try to be helpful to the community, mostly on Twitter and at conferences. I did my first presentation last year in Lyon for Directions, and I'm on deck to do a couple at Dynamics Con. So I'm looking forward to doing a panel with Tonya there.
Yeah,
that'll be excellent.
Even though we're right after the MVP panel, so I don't know how much we can add to the discussion, but hey,
it'll be a good time.
We know a few tricks.
It will be a great panel, a great conversation. Panels are a lot of fun.
No, it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun.
And with us also, AJ, I just have to say, I don't know if you noticed with all of your technical difficulties that you had in connecting, but I switched my hat out today for you because you were here.
I noticed that.
Yes. I don't know if we can see it on the camera. Yes.
Oh, man. You're going to get some time to put that together.
Lego McLaren? Look at that. You're muted, I think. AJ.
You're muted, AJ. You're muted.
You apparently can't hear us.
There are two mute buttons. There's one on the microphone and there's one on the screen. And so I was going to say, this has been in my office for about 2 years. And the reason it's still sitting here is because I made a promise to my daughter and to one of my team members, Janine, that I would build it with them. And I haven't been able to find a time to get both of them in. So until they come and they help me, this thing stays in a box. But McLaren, yeah, back on the wall, McLaren.
Yeah,
I should have worn my McLaren sweatshirt that my partner Andy gave me. So that would have been fantastic.
I contemplated also wearing McLaren team shirt because I have the bright orange team shirt, polo. I figured I would just go with the hat today, and we will have you back on, and we can break out our McLaren gear. I did get this from the F1 store. I had a shipment for the holidays.
I got a couple of comments to make before I forget. One, Henrik, I just found out the other day that dinosaurs are related to chickens. Apparently, there's a Netflix documentary about it. You know, you're calling yourself a dinosaur. So this made me think. Did you know that dinosaurs are supposedly birds? They're cousins of birds.
You know what? I mean, I'm not necessarily surprised. It's not something I knew.
Yeah. So I guess that's why the T-Rex had small arms, because it wasn't supposed to really have those arms. And then evolution made them go away. Two, Brad, I promised I wasn't smoking before this, but I feel like the background that you have is moving.
It is.
Either my I had Coke or Coke Zero is a little steak, or they put something in my coffee, or I don't know, but the brick wall is moving. And I'm like, so at some point I'm just going to start talking like, okay, dudes.
I can stop the movement of the wall. We did that for you.
The cat's out of the bag.
Fact, the cat. No pun intended. But with that,
reference to cat, reference to dinosaur. So for my birthday, my daughter gave me a bear. So I guess I'll just keep the bear. That's my spirit animal for our webinar today.
Look at
AJ has a bag of tricks over there. So we have a chicken dinosaur, and now AJ, every time he goes off camera, he comes back with a Lego McLaren. Now he comes back with a stuffed animal. I'm waiting to see what will be next. I'm hoping that it will be a glass of wine or something.
I don't know. No, I'll do the little introduction part. AJ Ansari, I work with DSWI. Been working with NAV and now BC since 2007. Over the years, I started off doing kind of implementation stuff. Then, out of necessity, did some development work. Got certified along the way as a developer, and then AL happened, and it kind of meant I knew nothing about development anymore because it was a rug got pulled from under me, and then I started to learn that again, and that became kind of a passion project, and that's gotten me to do a lot of workshops and sessions around AL for functional consultants. It's my tribe. And so I do that a lot on and off as workshops, as sessions of different length. And more recently, I've gotten really into playing with Copilot Studio. I used to have a blog. You can still find that on Wayback Archive. .org. It's called Let's Talk Nav, if you search for that. But I think my good fun thing that I want to share today is I get to present at BC Tech Days. Now, nice. I've presented at other conferences, but
excellent.
When I found that out, I couldn't get any work done the rest of that day. It was just like I was telling my wife, I can't remember the last time I got so giddy, because I have felt, and this is to be very honest, I felt I had absolutely no business being among the people that are at BC Tech Days, because those are the really smart people. And I'm like, I put a couple of sessions in there thinking, hey, let's see what happens. And one got picked, and I'm like, no way.
Which one are you doing?
It's on Copilot Studio. It's a workshop on Copilot Studio.
Nice.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I always would like to get over there and see, but you mentioned a couple of points which brought us all together, because it's a question that I get asked often. I think more now with the change of direction possibly, or with the application of where it's going. And that question that I get asked often, and you, AJ, mentioned you started off as a functional consultant. You worked with development. I know Henrik also dabbled with functional consultant and development. And Tonya, we have your history with development and where you've come from too. But I get often asked for individuals who want to, what do I learn about Business Central? Or they want to come in to work with it. I often get asked, should I be a functional consultant or should I be a developer? And hearing that question so often made me want to get a bunch of members of the community together that have some experience within the community, and for us to talk about that and to hear what your thoughts and your insights are on, is it better to be a functional consultant or is it better to be a developer? So what do you think on that? I'm curious to hear everyone's opinion.
Very cool conversation.
And you can use the word definition of better on how you would like to use the word better and what makes it better.
I think my thing is that I don't think there's developers are better than functional consultants, and I don't think functional consultants are better than developers. We have to work together, but I also am a firm believer in, if you are doing any development for Business Central, you have to understand accounting. You have to understand what the application does out of the box. For instance, if you have to create some functionality that could exist in standard, you really should think about designing it so it looks like the way it does in standard. Some of the worst things I've seen is some apps that they use a prefix in front of all of their menu items. And to me, a user should not know whether an app or whether the functionality they use is from a specific app or just the application as a whole. So that's my take on it. I mean, I myself is what in the old days we called a functional consultant, and I still do some of that. I don't do as much functionality consulting anymore as I've used to. But yeah, as from just a set thing, we need each other, and one is not better than the other.
I'm not wondering if one is better as far as the role, as far as which is a better, person per se. But if you are maybe going, let's say, in the career path, if I were to go down a road, is it better to be a functional consultant or better to be a developer? I too do believe that it's important for a developer to understand the application, how it works, how it uses, because it helps you architect a better solution if that's the role that you're in. I know a lot of developers in this ERP development, Business Central is a little bit different than what some will refer to as conventional development, where you get specs, you get designs, and they say, do this, here's a table, add these fields, do this. I don't know of many that receive those specs in this space. So I do feel that it's, important to understand the application. But if somebody were to ask you, and I'll drive this over to you, AJ, I know you dealt with both. Is it better to be a functional consultant or better to be a developer?
So I think it's better to be a developer. I will also make a comment that if you're only a developer, though, in 2024, I think you'll probably find that you're a lot less needed in an organization at a BC partner now than you were 10 years ago or 15 years ago. So let me kind of give a little bit. It's controversial. From being on this side of management, one of the things we see...
No controversy here for me. That's a very key point to make.
When you're looking at from the management side, you look at utilization figures of your organization. You see what consulting services team members, how much they're getting utilized and how much we're utilizing developers. Even in a growing organization, one of the things we find is percentage growth or utilization is heavier in consulting services, while on the development side, it ebbs and flows, and it's not consistently very high, because I think we're seeing more availability of apps on AppSource. And so our first go-to when something needs to be customized is no longer, or when there's a gap in functionality, is no longer to create it yourself. It's to look and see if there's an app in AppSource. So when you do more of that, there's a little less development. It's more tailor-fitting than custom stitching of a suit, I think, is what I would liken it to. So you need people who are really good developers. And I think so if you're a really strong developer who understands the application, who understands a lot, then you continue to be very valuable. But if you're just a developer, one trick pony, for lack of a better word, again with no disrespect to anybody, but if that's the only thing you know how to do, perhaps you'll find that there's fewer and fewer opportunities. It doesn't help too that you have things like low code and no code things that will also, to some extent, replace what you do as a traditional developer. I'll make one other observation and then I'll turn the floor over. I know Tonya's probably got some great thoughts as well to share. When I got my start in the NavBC world, it was easier and more acceptable for a consultant to learn how to develop and start doing it because it was a wild west a little bit, right? It was an integrated development environment. You just went to object designer, designed the object, and the only thing you really had to do was put in like two, forward slashes and comment out and document your code. And in the documentation trigger, follow your company's prefix on a couple of things. And dev standards were very lax, and everybody did that. I mean, there were even things that Microsoft employees had done. You could see their initials in code, and it just everybody kind of did their own thing. In today's world, even if you learn how to use AL as a functional consultant, we are now in a more collaborative world where we use DevOps and we use GitHub, and there's people who are utilizing source code management. I think organizations have better PATs and guidelines you have to follow on which object ID you select, which field numbers you use, what are your prefixes, and a whole lot of other things. Whereas a functional consultant, you can't just start dipping your toe into it. If you're going to do it, you have to get up with the standards. And you literally have to work in conjunction with your development team, and you can't be the Wild Wild West anymore. Otherwise, you can't really do that in an organization. You're hurting your organization, you're hurting your customer more than you're helping. So that's...
You hit some very key points. I know, as you mentioned, Tonya has some thoughts on that, but that whole Wild West coming back from the historical days caused a lot of problems, even with upgrades and a number of problems. And I do see in today's world where some of those that did that Wild West type implementation, and I like that way that you put that, they themselves put their organizations at risk because of the way they do it, because they still think they can easily code something, upload an extension, and that's where it resides without consideration for what happens if we need to have access to the source code, or what happens, as you had mentioned, with standards or, conflicts or changes of personnel. So, Tonya, what are your thoughts on if it's better to be a functional consultant or a developer?
I think there's a good mix between the two. Especially with the low code, no code, if you're functional, you can do a lot of, development type tasks. You can do Power Automate. You can, do, there's the different apps where you can create, add the fields to the pages, do all these personalizations. So it's kind of dev-like tasks, so having to know all the ins and outs of writing code. I think from a developer perspective, you definitely need to be more mindful of following all the coding standards. And I think being more disciplined as to, where are we putting our code? How are we working together, especially if you're working with ISVs, being able to have dependencies between the apps, and then how are we architecting that as a whole for our implementations. So we're working with a client right now where they have people who in the past were developers that would go in and add fields, and they just are completely overwhelmed with AL. We've shown them how to do different things, and they're like, we can go in and, add fields to the front end. But when it comes to how do we write these big reports that we did in SSRS, we don't know how to do that in AL. And they don't want to do that in AL. So we're building the queries for them and exposing the data, and they're using Excel report layouts. So they still have control then of how is their data displayed to them, but it's kind of like a separation between the AL developers are the ones that are, I guess, architecting the data for them. We're doing more complex development now, I feel like, than in the past, that, all of these, I guess, easier things are now more available to functionals than they were in the past.
I heard several different points, and I'll have to try to go back to all of them. AJ, you hit something that was key, and I think it could be dependent upon which type of organization it is. It's the utilization, right? The utilization of a developer and implementation. Is that for a partner, or is that for a company you had mentioned that deals with app source? Tonya, you flipped it over on the other side, and you had mentioned that you see more complex development, less simplistic development, and also AJ, you talked about the gaps that go through it, and I think it's twofold, in my opinion, from what I see in the conversations I had. I think the utilization of the developers is important. Back when we started to use Henrik's RAR in the dinosaur days, and AJ, you mentioned back in 2007 as well, which was still early on in the life cycle of the application, in my opinion, we didn't have a lot of the functionality. And it was, and not only not a lot of the functionality, we didn't have the rapid updates. We didn't have a lot of information available to us. We had, standard printed guides or PDF guides, and that's what we had. So a lot of times, some people, if they wanted to make a modification to the sales process, they'd create a whole new sales order entry process because that's what they did, because it was easier. But now, as to AJ's point, we have AppSource, as well as the open contribution to the base app and the system app now, where you can see and contribute to it. The functionality and the features are coming there, and I see a lot less of those large implementations that have a lot of modifications. They still exist. We still have some, but to what scale, to where you can get 2,000, 200, 3,000 projects, and then those complex developments, again, those types of things. I'm curious to know, what is the size of those projects, and how frequent do you have them versus what you had mentioned on the flip side with some of the more simplistic, let's add a field to a table.
Who are we starting with on this one?
Wherever we want, because I just jumbled, brain dumped, and got it all out there, because that's how I roll sometimes. Let's
go with Henrik. We haven't heard from Henrik in a while. We'll come back in the same order.
I think I want to go back to what Tonya said about the complexity, and I agree with that, and I also think one of the things that I kind of realized a couple of years ago when I did a class on Power BI was, you actually have to put a lot of more thought into your data when you want to do reporting. I also want to point out, and this is the thing I always tell people, NAV or BC is your transactional system. It's not a reporting system, right? I mean, if you want to do some big reports, you need to go through a data warehouse, be it Power BI or something else. But yeah, I agree that with AL, it has to be a much more structured process, because NAV in the old days was sold on the fact that it's easy to customize. It's easy to go in, add a field on the customer table for this and that and the other, and then smack them on a screen, right? Today, not so much. Yeah, there's tools that enable you to do it, but and to me, it's both a good and a bad thing, right? It's good in the sense of it requires that more structure. It's bad in the sense of now something that would have taken 5 minutes is now taking a lot longer. But we also know every time you put some duct tape on, it's only going to work for so long.
That we are hitting on a couple of points, but we're almost talking about the evolution or the complexity of managing development, which it's still to go back to, if I were to say, if somebody who was new to BC, somebody was introduced to it, whether at their company or somebody who's coming out of school that's looking for a new career. AJ, and if you had some points for the comments, we good. I'm just trying to throw some things out there, because I'm not going to downplay that we have to be more responsible developers. I don't want to say it's more complicated, because a lot of the things that we are doing now within AL development, a lot of other software development or software developers have been doing. Git has been
Yeah,
around
more
for
modern.
a long
Absolutely.
time. Having standards has been around for a long time. So to say that it's becoming more complex, it's more complex to the way it used to be. But to me, business-centered development is getting more in line to what I would call contemporary development standards, to where you have to take all of these things into consideration.
There's more checks and
So
balances.
I would definitely say that if you go to school now to do like software development so I did that. I went back to school for software development. So I actually had a class on Git and source code management. How do you work in a software development team? So we had to create branches. You have to manage pull requests. How do you handle merge conflicts? How do you assign tasks? How do you estimate things? So it's not just in, AL development. These are anywhere. And so when I came out of school, it was around 2017. So right when we started the switch, slowly to Business Central and AL. And it was a struggle for me because I took a whole class, 16 weeks of working in Git, and I'm working with the dinosaurs who have never done source code management. And how do we work as a team? And so it's been really cool to see how the product's evolved and how we've all, modernized in our software development. And so I think now we can really attract new developers who have, core just software development skills. You can have an object-oriented C# background and become an AL developer, and it's not as big of a shift as it was working in C-side.
I have an interesting thought too around new developers. I think if you went to school for software development and you've learned, Tonya, kind of the way you explained, working in collaborative environments with many team members and so on, and you don't yet have functional knowledge of Business Central or don't understand in general business systems, you may have more luck. You may have better outcomes, better experience working with an ISV where they're truly doing product development all the time, because you don't necessarily have to understand everything Business Central does. You may have to understand a certain amount of things within the scope of what your application extends. So I think there's a shorter runway, or you need a shorter runway to get used to it, and then you can focus on learning AL, and you can focus on applying that knowledge of AL towards product development, and there will always be continuous development work because it's a productized solution. You probably have one or more library of apps within that ISV, and you're constantly having to iterate, improve. There's a product roadmap for new feature development. So there's continuous work. At ISVs, I think the development team, there's always work. You're not always just waiting to fix an issue. You're looking to innovate, do a lot more. There's a certain amount of responsibility that goes there. Compare that to a partner side. I think on the partner side, you're more rewarded if you understand how the Business Central application works, to Henrik's point, accounting as well, not just how BC functionality works, but how does accounting work, because everything ends up as a debit or a credit at the end of the day. And those are important. So perhaps more experience on those other sides are needed beyond core development. And there are peaks and valleys. Like I said, utilization goes up and down. So we find that within the consulting team, you can take greater risks with younger team members who are learning, and more experienced team members. With developers, I think we'll probably do less of that. We hired one young development, Tonya, from when you were there. You remember Reagan, and so Reagan was probably the first time in a long time we brought on somebody as an intern on the development team, and kind of got him through the steps. I would say we would be less likely to repeat that, even though we're getting a good outcome, than what we do on the consultant side, where we continuously, year after year, bring on new team members and try to put them through. But that is where I would say I think the shift, where if you're a brand new to the world, probably want to look at the ISV world, learn the ropes, understand AL, through the process of it, also understand a little bit of how AL, BC, and other ERP systems in general work, and then make the transition over. The more specialized you are, the better you understand the system, better you understand those things, the more valuable you become. That's when you become a dinosaur. And becoming a dinosaur is not a bad thing, right? It's you have to be around long enough to be afforded the opportunity to become a
It's a
dinosaur.
badge of honor.
Sometimes people eliminate themselves through attrition. So if you're a dinosaur, anybody who's watching this or listening to this, and Tonya, I think you're young, but you're also a dinosaur. You're a young dinosaur, right? I think you have worked hard, and you have won the right to be called a dinosaur.
Correct.
Yeah.
So let's take a little bit and expand upon that, because where some of these conversations with me have come up, it's career paths, not only for new members of the Business Central space, but now there's existing member space. So now I've had conversations with other quasi dinosaurs that are very knowledgeable in nav development, Navision development, if you want to go way back. But now they're saying, do I learn AL? Do I go through the process of learning AL? It's similar to, I could go a couple of ways, but do I learn AL? Or, do I go down and learn the Power Platform, because now they're starting to have integrations with the data going out there. These are where it's all becoming like, is it better, and define better? Where's the complexity? Where's the growth path? Where can you have more opportunity to be successful?
You do come into a fork though in the road, like what you're saying, Brad. And a lot of people are trying to figure out, has been developing a nav for a long time, realizing, okay, do I want to continue this path, or do I want to learn other products that Microsoft is releasing? Like I said, Power Platform. It could be a good transition if that's the path they want to take, but have a good understanding background of the nav development, or be a functional. That was my transition for myself. Was I came in doing nav development, although I wasn't the best nav developer, I'll tell you that, but it kind of forced me along the way. Too. It forced me along the way that I have to be functional as well, especially when you're working at a client side where you're expected to know their business and you're expected to know the application, while you being the developer, the sole developer. And when you transition to the client, to the VAR side, you're kind of like, okay, do I just stick to just be the developer, or do I also do both? Right. So it was a weird transition for me when I went there.
Can I add something there? Henrik, I want your opinion on this specifically, because you've been around for a very long time as well. This is what I'm seeing. The people who are truly averse to learning something new or AL are also averse to learning Power Platform. They perhaps are in a late stage of their career. They don't want to learn something new because they feel, what's a reward? I'd much rather find somebody or a place or company or an end user where they continue to use old technologies and write it out and then retire. I find the ones who are willing to learn something new, maybe they have some road to pick, but a lot of times the ones who are just, they're saying, should I learn AL? Because you were been in CL so long, that it's not just should I learn AL, it's should I learn anything new? I have yet to meet somebody that says, I did so much CAL, but I'm not going to learn AL. I'm going to learn Power Platform. What do you think, Henrik? I mean, do you see something different? Because my
I guess my reach is not that big, so it's hard to say. I will say, so I started with the good old blue, right, and then I had to learn CAL, and and then I have to go to learn AL. And so I guess one comment or one thing that I've realized very quickly in the transfer to AL is, well, if you've ever done any, I don't want to, if I want to call it hardcore hacking or whatever, if you go into a nav 2016 and you export the objects as text, well, now you basically have the file format for AL, right? And I've done that a lot over the years, so I didn't feel like I necessarily, from a typing stuff out point of view, I didn't have to learn a whole lot, right? I mean, it was kind of like, okay, sure, it's formatted slightly different, and I'll be honest, for the longest time I was kind of like, why do I have to type all this? It's much faster to just view properties, change the property, and be done with, right? But as you go along, you kind of learn to appreciate some of those things. I've also done the couple of years ago, at BC Tech Days, I did a class on from Steve Renders on Power BI, because I was at that kind of thing myself, where, well, do I want to jump on this bandwagon or what not? And I think I realized after taking the class, Power BI is really cool, but I don't feel any personal reward for, look at this cool dashboard. I feel much more rewarded on a personal and a professional level, having made something super easy for a client. Well, instead of doing this, now you can click this button, and now this happens, right? So I think that's really, if we go back to what the topic of this really is kind of like, well, I mean, if you see somebody do something that you feel this is clunky, there's a better way of doing this, right? And many times it's, so I'm a very firm believer in the way I do things is I put a layer on top of standard functionality. Like, okay, well, if we do this, we skip these things, maybe we do them behind the scenes, and can do something simple, the better off we are. I mean, I always say one of my biggest compliments that I've taken is when we were done with a project, the project manager came and said, "Wow, I'm surprised with how little development we got away with doing." And my answer was, "Yeah, because I said no." Because it's kind of, and that, I think, is a thing you have to learn too. No is an okay answer sometimes. But for whether you should be a developer, whether you should be functional, I think it's much more, what do you geek out over, right? Do you enjoy, solving problems like that, or do you enjoy, figuring out the business process, and then knowing, well, in BC, this is what it takes to get there, and you can generally get there. I think that's what you have to take in mind too. And then, do you like to sit in your basement and just behind a screen in dark mode, or do you like to be, amongst people?
That's it. Well, you hit also on some key points, because in some cases, and that's one of the things that to put into there, what's better is also a point of interest, right? So define, this is what I'm saying. Better is one of those words to me. It's like somebody says, "Oh, I like that a lot," right? Define a lot, right? Is, or I did this a lot. Better is the same thing. So in your case, you're talking better is also keep in mind what your personal interests are and what gives you the gratification and satisfaction when you're done working for the day. Do you want to sit and work with a customer? I'll use that general blanket statement, somebody who's going to be using Navision, Business Central, whatever term I can use, and see and help them solve their business process through the use of the application, or maybe develop or architect a solution for them to see and have it running. I do remember one time, it is quite fulfilling after going through some implementations. I've been fortunate to always have been that functional developer, because I do strongly believe you have to know the application well in order to be able to architect and develop solutions. And to have to go on site back in the days when everybody went on site, to walk around in a business and see all the screens that they're using or what they're doing and go, I wrote that, and now this is what somebody does to run their business, is fulfilling in a sense for it.
Yep. A quick comment on trying to figure out which path to take, because also some people look at it from a market perspective. So, for example, maybe you don't want to go to Power Platform or functional because it's saturated. There's a lot more people there, and you want to market yourself. Maybe I want to focus more on AL development. Some people think that way, where I'd rather do AL because there's not a lot of people, and I can succeed quickly, and I can turn around results versus people that are new, even if you're coming in new. So there's that too to consider. I mean, everybody has their own approach.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so many things to consider. And
sometimes you're forced to get to that direction too, because it's based on the need. If you're working for a client,
I'm starting to get over what I'm thinking. I mean, you can't do everything anymore, though, unfortunately, because the application has evolved so well and so far with the features and functionality, then tackle on, we've talked about Power Platform, Power BI, and, not even mention, you can talk about Dataverse, Fabric, all these other, systems that you can use to integrate with Business Central. It's tough to know it all. So, it's just difficult to come up with. So go ahead, AJ.
I was going to say that also your personality traits, right? While both roles require you to be an effective communicator, if you're going to be a functional consultant, you have to be extroverted. You're going to spend a lot of time in customer-facing roles. You're going to be talking to them, explaining to them, just on and off. You'll probably spend the bulk of your day talking to customers. If you're a developer, depending on the organization you're in, the type of role you're in, you may or may not be doing a lot with customers. You may be doing a lot with your team as somebody from your team interfaces with the customer. So perhaps that's something to look at. But I would certainly say, regardless of what you choose, you have to be effective at communicating. If you're a bad communicator, you won't survive long in either role.
100%. And I think Brad and I talked about this too, where you could be a 10 out of 10 knowledgeable and technical, but your communication is 2 out of 10. Your customer, whoever you're talking to, they're going to know that you're 2 out of 10, regardless if you're super knowledgeable. But if you're like 6 out of 10 and you're 10 out of 10 communication, like they're going to think that you're 10 out of 10 every single time. This communication's key.
It is. The communication is extremely important in any role, functional consultant, developer, project manager, you name it. I think it's important in life because it helps you become successful. And, effective communication is even more important than just communication. So I'm still struggling to say, okay, which is a better path? And I think, the better path may be whichever path you go down.
So the question still says, which one's better? Your consulting answer is depends, right? Depends.
Yeah,
the answer is yes.
Depends.
Yes.
Yes, it depends on what you want. I mean, I think.
Well, but I think it's almost a little bit. So many years ago, I did a project, and the project manager was sitting at his table with 3, 4, 5 people, in line to ask them questions and whatnot. And I was just kind of, well, no, I'm not going to wait for this. So I walked out to the production floor and asked the guys on the production floor, hey, when you do this, blah 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 blah. Okay, I went back to my seat and I did some development, right? And then I just and then when he becomes available, he came over. Did you want to talk to me? No, I went out there, and I showed them, and so sometimes to me sometimes you can't be. People get this analysis paralysis, right? Where do I want to do this and do on this? And so I think what you're saying is, well, sometimes you gotta start taking some steps. You may realize after taking 3, 4, 5 steps that nope, this is not, and backtrack, and that's okay. I mean, at least now you've learned that you don't want to go down that route.
Yeah. Yep. Just something that comes to mind. And the answer maybe is, whose perspective are you looking from? Is it the perspective of the customer, the perspective of the individual? But let's assume one person had to do an entire project, and you can look outside and you can ask for any help. And I had to choose somebody. I'd probably choose a developer over a consultant, because and both people are generally smart. You'd say a developer could probably learn some of the functional side of things, and they could probably learn some basics on accounting and so on a lot faster than a functional consultant can learn how to do all the things he or she needs to do in AL to put together a project. I know you can poke a lot of holes in that theory, but it's just my opinion on the matter. I think if I had to get a project done with one person and they can't go to anybody else, I'd rather choose a developer who's been around a long time. And
that's
probably
the key point I was going to say, is because the developer that's been around a long time will also have a general understanding of the application, but also be able to go in, or have the ability to go in and take a look at what it's doing if you're having an undesired outcome, whether it be because it's not working properly or you misunderstand. Everyone always says, oh, this is broken. Well, sometimes it's not broken. This is just the way it works. You just expect it to be doing something else.
I literally just had that this week, where I had an expected behavior and it didn't do it. And I was like, And then, okay, I went to Stefan's repository, right? And I looked at the code. Oh, it's because I didn't set this flag. Okay, cool. So
Yep.
you can look at the code and see what needs to be done, even if you don't know all the technical or
AJ,
finite setup.
AJ, to your point, it is, you're right. You're choosing a developer. They have a lower learning curve learning the business and the functionality versus a functional person needing to develop, which has a higher learning curve for them to go over. So to get the most out of that, yeah, you're better off to get a developer that you can get them into learning functionality.
And there's another dimension. A responsible developer will choose not to develop something at times and say there are, yes, it can be done, but at what cost and at what risks, right? Just because you can extend something today, we can all agree that trying to write custom code for costing methods or to anything related to cost, high penalties for that. Anytime you try to circumvent or work around the way things happen. So I think as a developer, you would be really averse, an experienced developer, you'd be averse trying to do those just because it seems like a quick, short win. If it's somebody who's just a functional consultant, they can dream of these really big things in their mind and then try to do all of that without necessarily understanding it, because they can learn how to develop a little bit, but I think they might work themselves into a corner. I personally made that mistake. And so, who best than to look at yours? So Cost Control has a product has an app called Job Manager. So many years ago, when Cost Control it had the Job Manager, and Business Central at that point would not allow for the purchase of resources. And so we'd done a couple of those implementations, and everything had gone fine. Cost Control had a customization that would allow for purchase of resources. Well, we got into a new project, and this project did not need the whole Cost Control set. But what they did need, and they're adamant, is they wanted to use resources and purchase lines, and not just a cost associated with it. They wanted to see units used and so on and so forth. And I had learned to develop. I'd got my certification. And in my mind, I kind of could see a lot of those things coming together. And I decided to create a customization that would allow us to do that. And it worked. And 90% of the time, it worked all the time, except for the 10% it didn't. And we got these really weird errors because I think it would happen when we were trying to post receipts. And receiving resources became a problem. And it just, if you had one item and a resource on that same PO, it wouldn't post. And I never stopped to think about those things because I knew how to write code and I had seen how the system worked, and I was dangerous. I'd been doing this for a couple of years at this point, not very long, and it seemed all great, and it worked. It passed through the basic test because when we were testing, we'd only tested with resource lines. We hadn't tested with items. And when we were testing with items, I think if we had tested with like your basic warehouse without receiving needs. It was when we got to a complex warehouse setup where you had to receive, as I'm trying to remember, it's been a while, but those are little types of things. Could it happen to an experienced developer? It possibly would, but I think an experienced developer would probably not underestimate something like this, that a functional consultant who knows how to develop could probably do. And those are some of the risks I think that happen. And I say this, with the humility of I go teach AL for functional consultants, right? But I also lead a lot of those classes with great power comes great responsibility. It's my goal is to help people who used to actually know how to do, development. They'd mastered, or to some extent they were good, effective developers with CAL, but the rug got pulled from underneath your feet and they want to now learn the new technology. That's ideally the sweet spot that I'm trying to hit. Do others come to my class? Yes. But I'm trying to empower people, but I do understand, some of the problems that can come as a consequence of it.
Oh, there's a lot of problems that can go there. So Tonya, within your role, I mean, you now primarily in that development role. Within the development role that you have, you talked about you're seeing more of the complex type of requests from customers for you to work for enhancing their Business Central implementation. What is the general size and scope of those types of projects for those? Is it something that, there are a lot of larger projects, a lot of smaller, more detailed projects? Did I say that right? I see. I'm on the stuff that AJ had early when he first came on, when he was talking about the background moving. I was trying to go to the.
I think there's a good mix of project sizes and project scopes. I think when you start adding in, warehousing, like that automatically kind of makes it a little bit bigger, especially you don't necessarily have all the reporting of like lot numbers and everything that's part of the native BC reports. So that's something I see a lot in terms of customizing. But I think like another thing that we have to continually keep in mind is, like AJ said, our first instinct is to look at what's already been developed as opposed to writing something new all the time, like what ISV products are available, or what accelerators do you have at your shop that you would be able to implement or reuse. But then we have to look at how do those apps work together. And I think that we're kind of at that point where there's so many apps available through AppSource that we don't necessarily know how they work together and where are they interacting and where could there be collisions and pain points. And so we have kind of, our preferred ISVs that we work with over and over. And we know, okay, these two, there's an issue at this point in the posting process. So, trying to get then ISVs to work together as well to make sure that their apps can work in harmony in one environment is something that I think we're seeing a lot more of. And in the community, I see a lot more developers talking and interacting, and even with the base app being open source now, I think it's great because we're all collectively making one product better. It's not, just, oh, we're going to go customize this because it doesn't work. How do we make sure that, as a whole, BC works with, ISV solutions or PTEs?
Yes, it is a great effort because it is helping make the product better, more feature rich, more stable in a sense, and there's less carrying cost of modifications for customers, but the features that are being added. But I can challenge that because someone mentioned it to me too. In essence, that's also decreasing the need for development for implementations, which I'll go over to you, AJ. You work on the partner side, work on the implementations. What have you seen? And again, I know we wanted to talk about which is better, but we started talking about, the evolution of complexity. I just want to try to bring in a sense of the current landscape of implementations. What do you see over the trend, because you have been working this for so many years, of the application implementations that are purely functional versus heavy development? And when I say purely functional, I mean, you can have some light development. And for the record, I do not consider report modifications development. I mean, they may require a developer or somebody to do it, but that's you're not modifying or creating an extension. You're just changing output, right? So it's I don't want to say that it's trivial. I'm just saying a report to me is not development because most implementations need them. And you're gone again, AJ.
Das mute button. Yeah. I would say that our largest projects have development. I think they have a combination of a lot of ISVs and then a lot of development, right? I think that tends to happen, thankfully, because of the world we live in. All of that code is event-based extensions and so on, which is still a lot better than the old world where it just changes everything. I would say that if I'm looking at the middle of the bell curve, then that is probably where there's more report, addition of fields, a few things here and there, not very very much, and the kind of the tail end of the the bell curve, probably very nominal, if any. Again, entirely report, and since we're not counting reports, let's just say next to no development. So then, if you look at that bell curve closely, it once again creates the argument for experienced developers. I think as an employer and as on the management side, experienced developers are what we seek. On the consulting side, I think it's across the spectrum. We can have young consultants or young implementers we can train to be becoming consultants by having them shadow and be kind of apprentices, and you have lots of room for mid-level implementers and consultants who do a lot of knob turning and functional work, and that's not to diminish the skill. It's they're doing things that need to be done. But if you look at consulting in its truest form, that's when you are looking at experience and what you've done for other similar businesses, and you're recommending to the business what they should be doing and not just doing their bidding, right? So I feel on the consulting side, there's a spectrum of employees that we would benefit from, and I feel there's a path, right? So if you're at a partner, you could start off, if they are hiring a young out of college, you could start off with them, or some partners don't. You might kind of cut your teeth at some place, but eventually you're coming in as mid-level consultant. There's more runway. I think on the developer side, if you are a boutique partner like we are, we've got about 23, 25 employees. So if we're somewhere our size, we're probably not going to have a full life cycle of developers. I think we're probably going to want, or companies our size would typically want, developers who already have the experience, so that we can use them. This is more true now than it was before. I think that's what we're finding. So if you're looking as a prospective employee going in and you go, where do I have greater job security or a greater likelihood of finding a job? I would probably say look the consulting implementation route. But I also, the counterweight to that argument, as we were talking about earlier, if we needed one person to do the whole job, who would you do it? It would be a developer. So the answer is very different depending on your level of experience in this world.
I will throw in my 2 cents because I've worked at a small partner and now I work for a very large partner. We have, double the number of developers that you have that are straight out of college. So they did not, have any AL experience, and they are integration wizards. We have so many of these kids that they can, go and write all the integrations with APIs. They do a lot of the Power Platform. So, Power Platform, a consultant can go and set things up, but then we do very complex integrations with Power Platform. I actually did an import using Power Automate, and it was something that in the past I'd always written AL code for, and I did it in like a quarter of the time using Power Automate. So granted, I had to learn all of the Power Automate things, but I was just blown away at like what you could learn and do. And we still had a good portion of custom AL code, so it wasn't like you could just hand it over to the consultants to do. But I think from a consulting standpoint, you can even bring in the newbies, and they can go on site and kind of shadow the more experienced consultants to learn, how do we do an implementation? How do we work with Business Central? But I think they can also just like absorb the business process and see where the gaps are. So what are the pain points? What are our customers struggling with? What takes someone, 40 hours a week to do, or when they're running these month-end processes, what's taking someone a really long time? And then how do we improve that? Is it an import? Is it doing something with Power Automate? I think a lot of the process improvement type stuff is where we will continue to have the value add to Business Central and continue to, be able to do custom development or add-ons.
So it's a functional. So AJ was rather clear, even though he went depending upon the point of view of what he would recommend to somebody. I'm just trying to get some concrete, I know it's like everything, yes, it depends. But so what you're saying is
but I think what Tonya was saying, I think it really struck with me, because I think if we look at what happened parallel in the world, right? This thing about microservices has become so much more prevalent. And I think those of us that's been in the nav world for a long time we've done integrations before, right? We call some web services once in a while, but it's not something that we do on a regular basis, or at least I have not. So to Tonya's point, where you have this new influx of developers who, well, that's all they've ever done, right? They wouldn't dream of building something custom because there's a web service over here that does this. There's a web service over here that does this. So yeah, they have all that stuff. I mean, look at Stripe. I think is a good one, right? In today's world, nobody would dream of building their own payment processing. There's a handful of them out there that does everything you need to do. I didn't think about it until you brought it up. I think that's a very good point for some new developers.
There's a lot to read in that. And I think you had mentioned it's almost, I think a development in having a strong understanding of the application. And similar to what we started talking about when we came up in a previous podcast that we had, where it's talking about the knowledge that whether the experience that you have can hold you back. Because Tonya, you mentioned that the younger generation, they are using different services, understanding different technology. They think differently. I think that they're more aware of things that are processing, where maybe someone who's been doing AL development only knows AL development. This is how we've always had to do that. And they haven't thought outside, either because they haven't had the exposure, they haven't had the time, or they couldn't keep up with it. I mean, that can branch into so many different things, because how do you keep up with all of this? And anyway, which is a whole different episode we're going to have. But I think, again, I think it sounds to me, it's somebody who has a good understanding of the application and a good understanding of development is important to be like that, a person that can do both. Maybe not necessarily write a lot of complex development, but at least know how to find how the application works and be able to do some extensions and be able to consume other services or work with other services. Mr. Henrik, sir, can you give me how do you do? I don't even.
Gotta roll your R's.
I don't know how to roll my R. If I speak Spanish, I have I have the Northeast Spanish accent.
Yeah. So let me add one more dimension to something I was talking about earlier. I think to Tonya's point, I understand. I think as a larger organization, you obviously have more developers, and if you have more developers, then you bring them at different levels of experience. But if you are looking at partners in general, you will always find they have more consultants than they do developers, and therefore there's going to be more opportunities and more opportunities for growth. So you take a boutique organization like ours, and I think. So like I said, we're just around the 25-person mark, right? You take somebody like us, I think we're kind of smack in the middle of what a traditional BC partner is. There's partners who are really large because they do a lot of products. And, I worked at a company before that had 160 employees. But even within them, our BC practice was probably about the size of the company we are. And here we do primarily BC. And then you have some smaller mom and pop shops. I think we're kind of in that middle space as somebody who's boutique. So I think you go to a really large org and you have more developers, but you probably also have more consultants than you do developers. And you go to small ones where you might have one developer and then 2-3 consultants. And so the smaller your org becomes, and this is the dimension I'm trying to add, the smaller your org is, the more experience your developer has to be, because you have fewer of them to work with. And so therefore you kind of want to reach for the ones who've already got a lot of experience. I think as you grow larger, because you have a few more people, you can kind of, again, balance the level of skill as you need to. This argument will not hold for ISVs, however. I think ISVs do tend to be more developer-centric. The more products you have in your library, the bigger your product roadmap. You probably have more of a product development team. Just look at Microsoft. Microsoft's PC team is largely technical. The Business Central team in Lingby, because they are constantly evolving and building the product. There are more people around the roadmap and that side of it, and fewer people who need to be the implementation consultant side. They can get away. So this argument only holds for traditional VARs and partners, not for ISVs. That's like
we are Microsoft's functional consultants via BC Ideas.
We are, right? Yeah, they resell. So excellent point. I think by design, this is what we're meant to be. Yep.
I guess my one question would be, as they continue to roll out new updates like every month and new features, like how how do we continue to stay up to date? How do we continue to, like as a developer, you're continuing to learn and grow, and they changed the whole posting process, so now we have to relearn, where can we integrate our code with events. But like, I guess I'd like to hear like from Henrik, how do you continue to stay up to date on, all of the things? And I know like on our team, we have integration experts who do more of the integration projects. I've been focused a lot on reports lately. So obviously at like a larger organization, you have, more of your specialties. You might not know like the whole product like you used to, like Henrik probably has to know it inside and out. So, how do you continue to keep up with all of it?
I mean, the honest truth is, I don't know everything anymore, right? I used to. Things are changing. Part of the way I keep up with it is, partly on Twitter, right? We got people who are very active in tweeting and blogging about, this has happened, this has happened, this has happened. And I think from a developer point of view, you have to be aware that it is there, right? I'm working on a project right now where we had to do something for pricing. We created our own granule, again, going with I like to build stuff on top of standard. So why completely bastardize standard to shoehorn some functionality in when we can just create our own set of tables, do this, and then generate a sales order from it. So I was aware that the new price thing was coming out, and I've done a little reading on it, right? I couldn't necessarily tell you exactly how it works at that point, but now I can go and actually look at it very deeply. And point in case, just today, I actually went into the sandbox and looked in the feature management. I mean, there's a long list of this is going to be then basically the next version, right? I'm just kind of like, holy crap. That's a lot of new features. And some of them, as you say, the posting and the sales price are very different than they are today, but that's also new functionality that's there. So a lot of times it is kind of, well, I know that something is happening there. So I know if I need to do some development there, I need to go in and take a deeper look at, well, what does it do now? Or because as I said, ultimately, I like my solution to look like the standard product. So if I'm adding a feature that I know is going to be added later, well, I might as well make it the new way of doing it.
Yep.
But I mean, no, but it is, you can't, right? I mean, those days are over. I mean, and you have to be honest with yourself that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's impossible to know everything. I think you need to know something and know it well, and not try to do too many things. It is a difficult feat. That is another conversation that I hope to have in the future. I'd like to get some members of the community together. As I call it like how not to be a dinosaur. And I don't mean that in the dinosaurs.
To me, it's not necessarily that, because I've also tried many years ago. I did some work for a partner, and he told me about what he wanted and yada 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 yada, and spent an hour talking to me about it. And I looked at it and kind of, why don't we just use analysis views? And he looked at me. What do you mean? Let me show you how analysis views work. And kind of, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I mean, it is what it is. It's hard to know everything, and that's why you need to be part of a team.
Yes, and that's where you have some advantage of having multiple people to talk with. And now, thankfully, with technology, it's something that I was talked about earlier in the episode. We didn't have a lot, and that's why there were a lot of modifications, because the feature functionality that wasn't there. So I think that that's a whole separate challenge and a whole separate conversation. But I think for this, I don't know if I know any.
The answer still depends.
Right.
No.
Yes.
I have an answer. One, I was going to say to Tonya's last question, the answer is, how do you keep up with it all? It's easy. Brad and Christopher's Dynamics Corner podcast.
There
right?
you go. Thank you, AJ. Look at that. That was.
And then,
why didn't we think of that, Chris? Just listen here, and you'll hear about everything.
Let me clean my nose. The brown nose got too much. Let me wipe
AJ,
down
when
my nose over here.
we owe you a couple drinks, AJ, when we see you soon. So.
But no, it's a good question. So I guess I would like to throw it back at Tonya. I mean, what do you do?
I mean, podcasts. I read different blogs. I think the biggest thing for me in the past year has been being more involved on LinkedIn and Twitter, and being a part of the community. Like, I obviously have met all of you, and we all interact in different capacities, and being able to help each other out or ask questions. And I feel like we all are just building each other up. So
No, I agree. I mean, I think ultimately what that says, and this is the thing I've said about the NAV and the BC community for many years. We're not competitors. We're colleagues. Sure, the logo on our business card may be different, but we're all colleagues, right? I mean, unless you throw me under a bus, I'm going to assume that you're a friend and colleague to me, and and that's just kind of how I live, and so that and that's the only way we can all benefit.
Yep.
It's rising tides raise all ships. If the application, and I'll say this every episode if I have to, and your point of us not being competitors is important, because if the application does well, anybody who works with the application, whether it be from a customer, partner, ISV, will do well. And I think that, I still feel that
I'm just nodding because when this gets uploaded, it'll all look great because history gets uploaded independent of everybody
It'll be
else.
edited and no one would never notice.
So you just not inspired, like you said something really insightful, Brad.
Yes, that's all you have to do is just act, and that's thankfully use this. But with that, I think that I would like to thank all of you for taking the time to speak with us today. I do value your time. I know Kris and I talk about it all the time. We both value your time. I mean, we all live based on time, and for anybody who takes the opportunity to sit in the chair and share, thank you, AJ, so that they can learn something from us all. That's the individuals that speak with us, as well as the dialogue that Kris and I have with them. It's great, and we appreciate you, and I sincerely mean it. So with that, I would like each of you to give the opportunity to say, we talked a little bit about who you are at the beginning, but now, how would somebody be able to contact you or get in touch with you or see some of the other great things that you're doing if they want to continue the discussion on this or another topic? Tonya.
Yes, I am on LinkedIn, and I am also on Twitter, like I talked about. And I also have my blog where you can see my cats and more of my personal branding. So that will be in the show notes.
All right, great. Thank you. And I am waiting for that life-size cat tree.
We will be working on that.
Okay, great. Mr.
Wait, is it a cat tree or a tree cat? Very different things.
That is true. I think Brad said the cat tree first.
A
So.
human-sized cat tree.
Making sure.
The human-sized cat tree. Mr.
Yes.
That's not very dinosaur-like.
Oh, man, Henrik,
Well, that's
I
what
love
he
this.
put in his name. It's like,
This is what we're gonna do every time we see you at conferences. Now we're gonna walk up and be like,
Yeah, and to Tonya too on her cat tree.
Yes.
yeah, on the cat.
Yeah. Yes. I too have a blog. It's not necessarily super active. I have a bunch of posts in draft, but the I'm on Twitter as at the @H. My email personal is henrik@helgesen.us. Yes, it is .us. Yes, that is a legit email address. But yeah, and I definitely I'm signed up to do directions this year and DynamicsCon Live. So, come see me at those places as well. Hang out. And if you're a Scotch drinker, you're even a better friend.
oh, looking forward to seeing you and having a whiskey.
I got my cart back there with some whiskey. and
Mr.
scotch.
AJ,
Nice.
sir, you are everywhere, and you can tell us this, but I will have to say I am sad because on the X, the Twitter, I saw a photo of you, and I didn't know you were in the vicinity of me.
Oh, Tampa!
Yes.
I forgot you're in the Tampa St. Pete area. Oh man.
No, well, I'm a little further south
Okay.
now. But next time
He's
you're in
willing
the
to
area,
crawl all the way up there.
I'm willing.
You have my word. I
For
had some
me
time to kill yesterday afternoon. I would have driven down if you were within an hour.
Yeah, either a little bit more, but we could have met,
Yep.
or I could have
Halfway,
gone
yeah.
up ahead. We could have better. But next time, sir, I definitely owe you a couple drinks after the wonderful comments that you made. But we see you all over. We talked about you being in Tech Days. That's when, May?
Yes, it is May. Yep.
Excellent. And where else can we see you other than everywhere?
Well, I'll be at a lot of different conferences this year. I think I'll be at Dynamics. So doing a little bit of a Dynamics, Con Dynamics Minds, Tech Days, and then Days of Knowledge Central. So doing like a little bit of tour. Maybe Directions North America, but we don't have those sessions out yet. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on Twitter, but you'll probably zone me out or ignore me on Twitter because I do a lot more trash talking on college football. You see my Twitter usage goes up during college football season, and then it just kind of diminishes, and I'll have the odd BC tweet there. You heard this one here first because you asked. I'm about to start a podcast / place to aggregate my stuff. Right now, it's all on GitHub, GitHub / AJ Ansari, but I got a domain. It's going to be called Only BC Fans. I got onlybcfans.com.
Only BC fans.
Now, I also used our lawyer, our company lawyer, to make sure that it was okay to get that name, that OnlyFans was down for us. As long as you do, so as long as you are not doing a padlock and that italics and whatever font stuff they have, you're okay. So now I have onlybcfans.com, only Dynamics BC fans, or like a whole combination of things so that nobody steps on my great idea. And I plan to use lots of feet icons to highlight important points and stuff. So we're going to go a lot of the
I don't know where this is going to go. So
I have no idea, but this is going to be hilarious.
What do people have to do to participate to be on this Only BC Fans?
If it's a podcast, you just say, hey, I want to participate, and you participate. But I basically wanted a place to aggregate my content. I know I'm not going to have as much opportunities to write blogs like I used to before. So I don't want to have like a blog that just hardly ever put, but just have some place where maybe stuff that I've presented before, a library of my presentations where, the conferences are okay with me sharing some of the stuff out. Anything else that I've done, I'd like it to be there, and then also have a podcast. So, but yeah, Only BC fans. I look for creative fans, although Power Platform fans are also invited, and Copilot fans are too. Now I got to get the Only BC, but also Power Platform and CopilotFans.com. That is a little too long, though.
What about Only AJ fans?
It's really presumptuous.
Well, I'm just trying to help you not have to have 4,000 Only fans domains. I am eagerly awaiting the release to see this first episode or hear this first episode. Are you doing YouTube as well, or are you going to just keep it audio?
It will probably, some of this stuff might end up on YouTube. Just check back on this, because the most important thing was, getting the domain. I figure if I can't get the right domain, I'm not going to do any of this. I'm just going to stick to what I do, which is present at conferences. But hey, I got the domain, so now everything else can come with it.
Only be I can.
So it's like the cart first, then the horse, and I know I'm saying it backwards, but is this precisely how it worked? I got the domain first, and I'll think of content and what else we're going to do later. But yeah.
Chris, we'll have to send AJ the outtake at the beginning, because that could be the cover shot when you go into onlybcfans.com.
When it's captured.
And that's just like how we go into it. And everybody will just have, you have to have avatars for everybody that's a guest. And
cool.
And they can have their Only BC Fans. I can't even keep.
Exactly. You can't do it with a straight face. So,
no, you can't. You can't. But I would again like to thank all of you. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to seeing you all. I think we'll all be at some of the same conferences. I know for certain. Actually, I'm not going to say I think. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody in person, and hopefully we can do something, record something while we're there. Kris, tries to run around and get some recordings going while we're there. So,
So you're saying I need to bring my cat ears
You
with?
should.
Yes.
You should bring
You want the cat ears.
You need
Cat ears
to,
are awesome. I love this. This is pretty good. I love how they light up too. That's pretty cool.
It's a
Yes.
staple.
You need to bring the cat ears. You can bring your cat stickers, your
Yes.
glow-in-the-dark cat. If you
Yes.
start wearing a cat costume, I may draw the line there. But, the cat print shirts are okay.
Okay, sounds
So the
good.
BC Catwoman.
I do
I-
have a
There you go.
dinosaur shirt too.
Oh, there you go.
Oh,
You do?
I do.
nice.
Yes, it's like the Google when it crashes, Google Chrome.
Oh, yeah,
it's
yeah,
the
yeah.
dinosaur. Yep, I have a shirt with that on there.
Nice.
So.
well, AJ coined
all
it
I gotta
first.
say, I'm looking forward to getting the first sticker for my laptop that has
Yes.
that does glow in the dark. I mean,
Ooh.
now you're gonna have to have glow in the
Now
dark
I'm
on
gonna
that
have
sticker.
to make glow in the dark ones. Yep.
You will, but AJ coined it first. You are now the BC Catwoman, so that's your new
I'm fine with that.
new tag, and you can say it first that you heard it first where it came from, and you have to give AJ credit, and maybe
Hey, I'll even send you all an only BC fan sticker to show you how much I appreciate you guys. Whether you put it on your laptop or not, that's questionable.
I will
If you're
definitely
going
put
to be
that on
seeing
there.
customers, do not put it on your laptop. It might be very distracting for you can't get any work done. But hey, thank you, Brad. Thank you, Christopher. This is fantastic.
I mean, I don't know if you can see the painting I have in the back. I'm not too adverse to a little interesting stuff.
no,
Yeah.
no,
This
it's
is
great.
This is actually a thing one of my clients created.
Nice.
So.
Very cool.
It's nice. Well, thank you all. We'll talk with you all soon, and I look forward to seeing you all within the next couple months in person.
Absolutely.
Take care,
Go on,
boys.
guys.
All right, thank you.
Take
Ciao,
care.
ciao.
Bye, everybody. This was
Bye.
great.
Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.